Welcome back. Today we're discussing whether or not Palantir stock has just peaked. Now, obviously that's speculation, but we do have two important, interesting pieces of news, which is why I wanted to make this video. Usually not making videos if there's nothing to discuss. So let's get into it. First of all, we have CEO Alex Karp changing his stock sale plan, which results in him selling over $1 billion in stock. That's what the plan indicates, but this is down from $6 billion, so we'll get into that. And then we also have some political news that's affecting Palantir, which is the Pentagon budget cut. So this is, interesting in the sense that it's hitting Palantir at an all-time high. So the stock at plus or minus $123 per share has fallen 12%, is down another 3%. Or it fell by as much. So I think it closed down 10% and then fell another 3% after hours. And that is the key point here, following the Washington Post report that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has told top Pentagon brass to prepare to cut the U.S. defense budget by 8% each year for the next 5 years. Now, Palantir historically has been lobbying, not in the sense that they're paying money as far as I know, but lobbying in their communications from Karp, from Shyam, that they need to increase the percentage of spend from the Defense Department on AI. Now, this is not in direct reference to AI, but in reference to cutting the overall budget by 8%. And obviously, half of Palantir's business is in much part tied to the defense spending. So you can obviously draw that connection, but it's a little bit of an indirect correlation of what exactly is the impact here for Palantir on future growth, which is presumably why the stock is down. And obviously Palantir known for its contracting work for defense agencies. So let's get into it here. Both of these pieces of news hitting the stock around the same time, which is why we saw it fall. And so Tuesday night, so last night, as I'm recording this, Palantir disclosed Karp's new plan will allow him to sell nearly 10 million shares. And the key point here is it's over the next 6 months. It hasn't happened yet, but that's why they do these plans, is to make investors aware of it. And additionally, I wanted to draw attention to the fact that this was a plan for $6 billion. Just did a search here with the new deep search from Grok, and it calls attention to the fact that this replaces a previous plan in which Karp was set to sell $6 billion worth of shares. So down to about $1 billion from $6 billion is interesting, and I know there's a lot of controversy with these Rule 10b5-1 plans where insiders, of course, they make these plans to prevent scrutiny on insider trading because the plan is out there. You can't just buy stock on the open market or sell stock on the open market without a plan and being scrutinized. So there's one thing to be said there, but it does allow you to cancel your plans at any time. So that's a bit of a controversial thing in the sense that you can say, I'm going to buy all of this stock at this point, or I'm going to sell all of this stock at this point. And then you can cancel your plan to do so. So there is some manipulation. And the other thing you could say, if you're being cynical, is Karp floated the $6 billion number, and he only ever planned to sell $1 billion. So it looks like it was a reduced sale. But I mean, that's very cynical. I don't see anyone saying that. It just came to my mind if the bears grab onto that. But yeah, it looks like the planned sale is about $1.2 billion. And of course, we've had insider selling from the very beginning. If you were day one like me, there were insiders from day one complaining that they couldn't sell shares. This was a real headline, and that's because they did a direct listing, so there were some complications. There was the whole lockup period. And so insider selling has been a number one, number two, or number three discussion topic for this stock for the last 5 years. And for me, it's just something that I think you have to get just just get around. Of course, it's frustrating. We wish insiders could buy shares or at the very least not sell them. But it's just, you're not buying, they're not going to be buying the stock when it's up 100x from when they got in, depending on when they joined the company, right? So from the co-founders, way much more than that. So you just have to accept it. They're not going to be buying, and the best case, they're holding a large chunk of their position. Worst case, they are selling, but we've seen a lot of these insiders sell much lower. Shyam was selling in the $20 range years ago, and I'm sure he either regrets that or doesn't care, at which point he's selling shares. So that's just what you have to understand when it comes to that. When it comes to the defense spending thing, the defense spending news topic, it is interesting, right? Because this comes in with the confluence of the Department of Government Efficiency, although probably not exactly driven by that. But we know Palantir is working with Doge. We know the government needs to get spending under control, and obviously defense is a huge piece of that. And so we'll see what happens here. But the question you should be asking yourself is, what impact is this going to have on Palantir's business? I think a fairly limited impact, because Palantir always does its best to drive the most high impact solutions. And usually they're not affected by something like this, where you would be cutting out the fat of the defense spending. Usually Palantir would actually thrive in this scenario. So I'm definitely not saying it's a good thing. It's certainly not a good thing, but I am saying I think the market's reaction is a little bit of an overreaction. However, the point I want to conclude on in this video is when you have a high-flying stock like Palantir that's been a rocket ship from $5 to $125, you really do need some sort of pullback at some point. And this is where I've been a little bit hesitant on Palantir. It's like great that it's gone up so much, especially recently. It's like I've been thinking about what exactly would drive this stock down. DeepSeek didn't do it because DeepSeek is not a threat to Palantir's business. It actually strengthens the Palantir story. But of course, inevitably, you have these type of headlines that call into question, a stock that's trading for worth $300 billion when a price to earnings ratio is 600. The ratio is 600, which is crazy to say. That's trailing. That's not forward. Forward is much lower than that, around, I think, a couple hundred. But regardless, my point here being, you will get a headline that knocks the stock off its all-time high. We saw this with NVIDIA, and I guess the question is, what's going to happen from here? Now, obviously, this doesn't necessarily matter if you're only focused on the long term, which is what I recommend. But if you want to speculate, and if you're involved day-to-day with Palantir, what's going to happen from here? The big question I have is, what are institutions going to do? Institutions have driven Palantir to where it currently is. Retail has not been the group moving Palantir past $50. It's just too much money to make that type of move. We know institutions have been driving this, and we know actually retail has been net sellers. So retail has actually been selling to institutions. And now we have this first real negative headline that I can think of related to Palantir's, one of their segments. In this case, it's the government segment. The question is, what are institutions going to do? Are they going to step in? They've been buying at this high-flying valuation, which, not to say you're not going to make money, that we're not going to make money on Palantir over a longer period of time, but I think over a few month or a short-term outlook, it's like uncertain. I don't think you can make the case that Palantir is significantly underrated in the short term. Again, that doesn't impact the long term. However, I think what we need to see is, what are institutions going to be doing? Are they going to be backing up at $100 per share, loading the truck up with even more Palantir stock? Or is this going to be a little bit of a short-term top in the stock? Again, I don't care either way. But it's an interesting moment for the company. It's never been worth this much, and it only takes like one negative headline to sort of pop the short-term excitement. And there's no doubt about it in my mind that there is a little bit too much. Palantir's flying a little too high, and we want it to be an organic rise in the stock. And I think some of that has been a bit momentum driven, and I think that's going to get tested very soon from this and potentially anything else that comes out. But I don't think this is fundamentally a bad week for Palantir in any respect. I think it's just news, and the market's coming to grips with it. So as you can see, we're down 14% today, and will be interesting to see what happens from here. Love to hear your thoughts and comments. Until next time.